Hi, Lynn Jones again. In this presentation, I'll talk about the survey strategy and what we did with the FBS 1.6 simulations. In 1.6, we have a set of runs called potential schedulers. This set of simulations is different than our previous releases. So for example, the FBS 1.5 release included a lot of families of simulations where we varied individual aspects of the survey strategy to look at their effects on metrics. With this 1.6 set of potential schedulers, we vary multiple aspects of the survey strategy at once, focusing on a single goal. So here we'll take several of those different experiments that we did in the 1.5 release and try to combine them. So first up is the baseline. This is just like the current baseline survey strategy. The deep drilling fields are 5% of the time. There's a DDF heavy simulation, deep drilling field heavy, and this is the same baseline survey, but it increases the deep drilling fraction from 5% to 13.4%. So the deep drilling fields will get an increased cadence and they'll have deeper co-added depths. There's the bare bones simulation. So this is a simple wide fast deep only footprint. Pairs are taken in the same filter and the deep drilling fields are held to 2.5%. The idea here is to focus on the SRD goals related to the number of visits per pointing in the wide fast deep. And it also shows how fast we could cover the wide fast deep if that was our primary goal. Say for example the survey was very far behind and we had to catch up in wide fast deep. This simulation also demonstrates the open shutter time can reach a maximum of about 80%. There's the data management heavy simulation. This is that same baseline survey footprint, but we add high air mass DCR visits and the requirement to have good seeing images in each year. This should help us get better images for difference imaging, better templates. It also features alignment of the camera rotator so that the diffraction spikes are aligned with the CCD XY columns. And in the deep drilling fields, we have larger dithers. In the rolling extragalactic simulation, we use a big sky style footprint. So this moves the wide fast deep away from the galactic plane and extends it north and south. But in this survey footprint, we do include some coverage of the NES galactic plane and south celestial pole. The wide fast deep is covered with an alt-sketch style 2-band rolling cadence, where the sky is actually split into 4 different bands. And a north and south band are both covered in alternating years. So you have 2 out of 4 bands observed in each year. The Milky Way heavy simulation uses a baseline survey footprint, but it's modified with more visits in the bulge and LMC SMC. The solar system heavy simulation uses, again, the baseline survey footprint, but adds more visits around the entire ecliptic and adds a twilight NEO mini survey. Pairs are taken in R plus R, but then all the other band passes are split filters, so I and Z, for example. And then the final simulation is the combo dust simulation. This was our attempt to combine what we saw as working well in the individual survey strategy experiments and combine them all at once to try to get as close to maximum science coverage as we could. So it uses a big sky style footprint, that coverage that goes further north and south with low dust extinction. We added bulge coverage and also higher density and galactic anti-center coverage, and added LMC SMC visits, and there is NES North Ecliptic Spur coverage. So how did these look? I'm going to show you what looks like a kind of complicated plot here. This is the same plot on the left and the right, but rotated, so that you can read the labels for each of the simulations easier on the right, but it's easier for the eye to follow the metric results, which are the little lines on the left. So these metrics, the metrics tracked here are just the SRD metrics. So we track the number of visits per pointing across the wide fast deep and then take the median, and that's what we call FONV, median end visits. It's a very useful number to tell you how many visits are you spreading across the wide fast deep on average. We also have shown 1 over the median parallax error at 2 different magnitudes, and 1 over the median proper motion error, again at 2 different magnitudes. And you can see a lot of these metrics scale fairly similarly. What we've done in each of these is normalize it by the baseline run. And so you can see that when the number of visits goes up, the parallax error 1 over the parallax error tends to go up, so the parallax error tends to go down, for example. And you see also that these SRD metrics are fairly high. Bigger is better. In the wide fast deep focused run, the bare bones simulation. This makes sense. We were trying to do very well on the wide fast deep. And in the other runs, where you see that they drop a little bit lower, tends to be where we've taken more time out of the wide fast deep and put it in other aspects of the survey, either in the DDF heavy, we put that time into the deep drilling fields, or in the combo dust, we put the time into other regions of the sky so that we could have 825 visits per pointing in the wide fast deep, but also cover the other parts of the sky like the bulge and the NES with the number of visits required for that science. So you see another feature here is that some of the columns are shaded and some of them are clear. The ones that are shaded are simulations which have been done with 2 by 15 second visits, and the ones that are not shaded are 1 by 30 second visits. This is an aspect of the survey strategy that we can't completely define currently, and so we need to sort of keep those both in mind as we go forward. Basically, you see that for runs with 2 by 15 second visits, because we get fewer visits overall, the metrics are a little lower, and then when we use 1 by 30 second visits, the SRD metrics tend to be a little higher. So here's a similar kind of plot, but using other kinds of metrics. So at the top, you still see the SRD on the left-hand plot, you see different groups of metric in each panel of the plot. The runs are still labeled in the same order as previously, and on the top left, you see the SRD metrics. So again, you see where it was wide, fast, deep only, the SRD metrics are quite happy. The next row down, the next 2 rows down are sort of metadata style metrics. One of them is looking at the gap between visits, and another one is looking at just sort of the mean number of visits. The final row on the left is interesting because this is where we've put a series of transients and variable stars metrics that we've been contributed by the community. So the most sensitive out of these in this group of metrics to these sets of runs, you see that cyan line jumping up and down, and that tends to correlate with where we have more bulge coverage. And that metric is fast microlensing. And it's not surprising that you get more fast microlensing events when you cover the bulge with more visits. All right, so you see that the combo dust and the Milky Way heavy and the solar system heavy simulations do well for bulge coverage. On the right, there are some more metrics. The top group here are metrics that have been contributed by the desk group, and these are their metrics that are primarily aimed at understanding performance in the wide, fast, deep field. So you can see that there's a little bit of a mix. Some of the metrics go up when other ones go down. But perhaps the most important metrics are the ones that you can see, at least from my outside of desk viewpoint, are the ones that go up, the sort of cyan black lines, because those are tracking the effective survey area and the 3 by 2 point figure of merit emulator. And some of the other ones are tracking things like the variance in the co-added depth in I-band across the sky. But what you see here is that when you get visits away from the plane, when you move that wide, fast, deep into areas of low extinction, the metrics are happier. And that's because a lot of the metrics for the dust scale as the amount of area and the depth covered in low dust extinction regions. The next panel in this on the right is just simply the total number of galaxies measured by LSST. And then the bottom panel on the right shows you the solar system discovery metrics. So in the solar system, there's many metrics we could use. Completeness of discovering the population, various populations throughout the solar system, works fairly well and is one of our primary metrics. So here there's multiple lines because we have multiple populations we're tracking. There's potentially hazardous asteroids, near-Earth objects, main belt asteroids, Jovian Trojans, and trans-Neptunian objects. And what you see here is that there is some variation across the different runs, but where you see a big problem is with the bare bones simulations, because those did not include a northern ecliptic spur. So that pushes down the completeness for the trans-Neptunian objects because they move very slowly around the sky. And so if you're not looking where they are in the north ecliptic spur, you don't find them. The other simulations are sort of a bit mixed, and what's interesting is we don't see a big boost with the solar system heavy simulation. Some of that might be worth going back to tweak some of the simulation parameters to see if we could do better. And some of it kind of comes down to the fact that once you cover the entire sky and you get a lot of visits, if the visits are still about the same depth, we're not dropping below our minimum thresholds. So all of these simulations could probably be tweaked a little bit more towards the particular science goals they're making. But what I take out of this is that in general, there are few deal breaker survey strategy aspects. There are some things that you can do that make it much better, and a lot of those have to do with the footprint. So I suspect the next thing we need to do is understand what we want the survey footprint to look like, and perhaps also the filter distribution for that footprint. And then we can look at things like, how do we want the visits within a night to go, and how do we want the visits over the season to go? So I will leave you by popping up the characteristics of those 8 potential schedulers, and just say these are maybe more complicated to analyze than the FPS 1.5 simulations where we ran individual aspects of the survey strategy, but they do try to show us examples of combining different aspects of the survey strategy and how some of it might work together.